Hey everyone, welcome back to Mano's podcast. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to remind you that if you're enjoying these conversations, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on anything new that's coming your way. Also, if you want to explore more episodes from this series, make sure to check out our podcast playlist. There are tons of valuable lessons waiting for you there. So go ahead and add that to your library. And if this episode resonates with you, don't forget to share it with someone who needs to hear these ideas. Your share could genuinely change someone's life. Now, let's get into today's topic, which I'm really excited to talk about with you. You know, when I look around at the world today, I see something that really strikes me. Most people are walking through their lives, but they're not really present in them. They're moving, they're talking, they're interacting, but there's something missing, something essential. They see things, but they don't truly take them in. They hear words, but the deeper meaning escapes them. They meet people, but they don't understand what those people are really about. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I realize that the difference between people who truly progress in life and those who stay stuck isn't just about hard work. It's not just about intelligence or luck or opportunity. It's about something much simpler but infinitely more powerful: awareness. The ability to truly notice what's happening around you and within you. Think about this for a moment. How many conversations have you had today where you were physically present but mentally somewhere else? How many times have you eaten food without actually tasting it? How many people have walked past you on the street that you didn't really see? This is what I'm talking about. We live in a mode of autopilot, and autopilot keeps us stuck. Awareness is not just about opening your eyes. Awareness means you're genuinely paying attention. It means you're picking up on things that other people miss. It means you're understanding situations before you react to them. It means you're constantly learning from your environment, from the people around you, from your own experiences, and from even the smallest details that most people overlook. When you develop real awareness, something shifts in you. You become harder to manipulate because you see through things. You become wiser because you're actually learning from life instead of just living through it. You make better decisions because you're basing them on a clear understanding of what's actually happening, not on emotions or assumptions. You build better relationships because you understand people more deeply. This is what I want to explore with you today, because I genuinely believe that if you can master the art of awareness, your entire life will transform, not immediately, but gradually, consistently, in ways that will surprise you. Let me start with something I've noticed about how most people operate in the world. We're all so quick to respond. Something happens and we react immediately. It's like we're on autopilot, just responding to stimuli like animals in the wild. A coworker says something that could be interpreted as criticism, and we get defensive immediately. Someone doesn't respond to our message, and we assume they're ignoring us. We make a small mistake and we panic instead of thinking through the situation carefully. This is one of the biggest patterns I've noticed in people who struggle in life. They react too fast. And you know what? The faster you react, the more mistakes you make. It's just mathematics. But when you develop awareness, you do something different. You pause. Before you react, before you speak, before you make a decision, you pause. You take a moment to actually understand what's happening. You ask yourself real questions. Is this person trying to hurt me, or are they having a bad day? Is this a real problem, or am I overreacting? What would happen if I didn't respond right now? What's the wisest thing I could do in this situation? I know this might sound simple, but this single habit can change your entire life. Here's why. When you react too quickly, your emotions are in control. Anger makes you say things you can't take back. Fear makes you make terrible decisions. Excitement makes you commit to things you can't actually follow through on. Sadness makes you believe things that aren't true. But when you pause, even for just 30 seconds, your thinking brain gets involved. Your prefrontal cortex wakes up and says, "Hold on, let's actually think about this." You start seeing the full picture. You realize that the person who was rude to you is probably dealing with something heavy in their own life. You understand that not every criticism is an attack. You see that many problems aren't actually emergencies. Let me give you a real example from my own life. I used to be the kind of person who would check my phone first thing in the morning, and I'd immediately see some kind of message or notification that would upset me. Maybe it was someone saying something I didn't like, or bad news, or just something that required my attention, and I would react to it immediately, either by responding angrily or by getting stressed out about it. This would set the tone for my entire day. My peace was gone, my focus was gone, everything else just felt harder. But then I learned about this concept of pausing, and I completely changed my morning routine. Now I don't touch my phone for at least an hour. I meditate, I think about my day, I prepare myself mentally. And by the time I check my phone, I've already built up awareness. When I see something upsetting, I can evaluate it calmly. I can decide whether it actually deserves my energy or whether I should let it go. This one change has made my mornings infinitely better. And here's the thing, it's not about having a different life with fewer problems. It's about approaching the same life with more wisdom. The problems are still there, but I'm not being controlled by them anymore. Think about the people you know who seem to have peace and stability. Don't they seem like they're somehow less bothered by things? And people you know who seem stressed and constantly in drama. They're always reacting to everything immediately, aren't they? This isn't a coincidence. This is awareness versus reactivity. So here's what I'm asking you to do this week. Start noticing how quickly you react to things. When something happens that bothers you, can you create just a little gap? Can you take 3 deep breaths before you respond? Can you ask yourself one question before you act? This small practice will start building your awareness muscle. And I promise you, over time, this will change how people perceive you. They'll think you're wiser than you were before. They'll notice that you're calmer, more grounded. And the truth is, you're not really changing who you are. You're just becoming more aware of who you actually are beneath all the reactivity. Now I want to talk about something that I think is one of the most important lessons about awareness. The ability to see people clearly. And by clearly, I mean seeing who they actually are, not who they say they are. Here's something I've learned that probably sounds a bit cynical at first, but I promise it comes from a place of love. Words are cheap. Absolutely anyone can say beautiful things. I can tell you that I care about you, that I support you, that I'm there for you. These words feel good to hear. They make us want to believe in people. And sometimes people mean them when they say them, but sometimes they don't. The real question is not what people say. The real question is what people do. What is their consistent behavior? Do they actually show up when they promise they will? Do they respect your time and energy? Do they listen when you're talking, or are they just waiting for their turn to speak? When you're struggling, do they actually help or do they disappear? Do they celebrate your wins or do they seem secretly unhappy when good things happen to you? I think about this a lot and I realize that most people miss this because they're too eager to believe in people. We want to believe in people because believing in people is more comfortable than being cautious. We want our family to be trustworthy, our friends to be genuine, our colleagues to be fair. So we believe their words even when their actions tell a different story. Let me give you a real example. I had a friend once who would always say the right things. When I was going through something difficult, they would say, "I'm here for you, brother, whatever you need." These words meant a lot to me. But then when I actually needed help, when I was really struggling, this person was nowhere to be found. They were busy, they had their own problems, they weren't available. At first I made excuses for them. Everyone's busy, right? Everyone has their own stuff going on. But then I realized something. Other people in my life, people who said less about how much they cared, were actually there. They showed up. They didn't make a big deal about it. They just did it. So which people actually cared about me? Not the ones who talked about it, the ones who did it. This is what I mean about awareness. When you become aware of patterns, you stop being fooled by words. You start seeing people for who they actually are, not who they're pretending to be. Now, I want to be careful here because I'm not saying we should become cynical or paranoid about people. That's not it at all. I'm saying we should be realistic. We should acknowledge what we see, even when it's uncomfortable. We should notice when someone's actions don't match their words, and instead of making excuses or pretending not to notice, we should actually process what that means for the relationship. And here's the thing about patterns. One time something could be an accident. Someone could have a bad day. Someone could say something hurtful because they're stressed. I get that. Everyone deserves grace for that. But when something happens again and again, that's not an accident anymore. That's a pattern. And patterns show you who someone really is. Think about someone in your life. Is there someone who always cancels on you? Is there someone who always talks about themselves and never asks about you? Is there someone who only reaches out when they need something? Is there someone who respects your time and energy? Is there someone who actually listens? Is there someone who celebrates your growth? These patterns are so important because they tell you how to relate to this person. They tell you what role this person should play in your life. And that's not mean, that's just wisdom. I've come to understand that not everyone deserves the same level of access to your life. Some people can be your closest friends and confidants. Some people can be acquaintances. Some people can be people you're friendly with but don't trust deeply. It's not about hating anyone. It's about being smart with your energy and your trust. Because here's what I've realized. The people around you affect everything. They affect your mindset. They affect whether you feel motivated or discouraged. They affect whether you're willing to try new things or whether you feel held back. They affect your peace. They affect your future. This is serious stuff. So when I talk about observing people's actions, I'm really saying, take care of who you let into your inner circle. And the way you take care of that is by actually watching what people do, not just listening to what they say. If someone is consistently respectful, kind, supportive, and genuine, that's a green light. Keep them close. If someone is consistently drama-filled, negative, self-centered, or disrespectful, that's a red flag. You can still be kind to them, but maybe they don't need to be in your inner circle. This awareness will change your relationships. It will probably reduce some of them. Some people who you thought were your friends might not be. That's going to feel sad at first, but it makes room for real relationships, real friendships, real support. And that's infinitely more valuable than a bunch of people in your life who aren't actually there for you. Okay, so we've talked about noticing when to react versus when to pause, and we've talked about seeing people clearly. But there's something even more important than all of that, and that's understanding yourself. That's turning the lens of awareness inward and really honestly looking at yourself. This is where most people get uncomfortable because it requires honesty, real honesty, not the kind where you're being hard on yourself and feeling sorry for yourself. I'm talking about clear-eyed, compassionate honesty about who you actually are and what you're actually doing with your life. Here's what I've noticed. Most people want to change their lives, but they don't actually understand themselves first. They don't know why they do the things they do. They don't know what their patterns are. They don't know why they keep making the same mistakes. They don't know what their real obstacles are. So they try to change and they change for a little while, but then they fall back into the same patterns because they never actually understood what the problem was. It's like trying to fix a car when you don't know what's broken. You might tighten a bolt here or change a filter there, but if you don't diagnose the actual problem, you're not going to fix it. I think about this in terms of my own life. For a long time, I would say I wanted to be more disciplined. I would make big plans. I would commit to waking up early and working on my goals and building myself up. And I would do it for a few days, maybe a week. But then I'd fall back into old patterns. I'd sleep in, I'd waste time, I'd tell myself I'd do it tomorrow. And I kept blaming myself. I kept saying, why am I so lazy? Why can't I just stick to something? But I wasn't actually asking the right question. The right question was, what is actually stopping me? So I started observing myself. I started really paying attention to my own life. When did I feel motivated? When did I feel lazy? What time of day was I actually able to focus? What distractions were pulling at me? When I tried to work, what was I actually thinking about? What emotions were coming up? And when I observed all this, I realized something really interesting. I wasn't lazy. I was actually capable of great effort and focus when something mattered to me. But I was scattered. I was trying to do too many things at once. I was working on projects that didn't actually excite me, so my mind kept pulling me elsewhere. I was checking my phone because I hadn't actually put it away. I wasn't lazy. I just wasn't being smart about my environment and my focus. Once I understood this, I changed things. I removed distractions. I started working on fewer things that actually mattered to me. And suddenly, discipline stopped being a struggle. It became natural because I was working with my actual nature, not against it. This is what self-awareness does. It helps you understand what you're actually dealing with. And once you understand it, you can address it. You can't change what you don't see. Let me talk about thoughts for a moment because I think our thoughts are one of the most important places to bring awareness. We think something like 60,000 thoughts a day. That's a lot. And most of those thoughts are happening without us even noticing. They're just automatic. They're based on old patterns and old beliefs. But here's the thing. Your thoughts absolutely shape your reality. If you're thinking, I can't do this, your body won't try fully because your mind has already decided it's not possible. If you're thinking, I'm not good enough, your confidence will shrivel up. If you're thinking, I always fail, you'll start expecting failure and you'll subconsciously sabotage yourself to confirm that belief. But if you can observe your thoughts, you don't have to believe all of them. You can notice when your mind is running an old program and say, actually, that's not necessarily true. I'm learning, I'm capable, I'm getting better. This might sound like positive thinking, and it partially is, but it's not toxic positivity. It's realistic awareness. I notice this with people and language. Someone will say something like, I'm just bad at English. And I'll hear this and think, no, you're just at the beginning of learning English. You haven't practiced enough yet. That's completely different from being bad at English. But the person has already decided, so they don't practice, they don't try, and so they never improve. And they conclude, see, I'm bad at English. This is the power and the trap of self-awareness combined with thought. If you're aware of your negative thoughts and you believe them, they become your reality. But if you're aware of your negative thoughts and you don't believe them, you can choose different thoughts. And those different thoughts create different results. I spend some time every day just noticing my thoughts. What am I thinking about? What beliefs am I holding? Are these thoughts helping me or hurting me? Are these beliefs true or are they just old programs running? And then I also notice my emotions. When do I feel energized? When do I feel drained? When do I feel excited? When do I feel discouraged? Why do I feel the way I feel? What triggered this emotion? Is this emotion trying to tell me something important? Emotions are data. They're information about what's happening inside you. But most people just react to emotions without actually understanding them. They feel angry and they lash out. They feel sad and they give up. They feel anxious and they avoid things. They never actually ask, what is this emotion telling me? When you bring awareness to your emotions, something shifts. You realize that you're not your emotions. You're the one observing the emotions. You're the one who can decide what to do with them. And that puts you in a different position. You're in control. The emotions aren't in control of you. Let me give you a practice. Every night, spend 5 minutes just thinking about your day. Ask yourself 3 questions. What did I do well today? What did I waste time on today? What will I improve tomorrow? Just these 3 questions. But when you ask them consistently, you start building awareness of your own life. You start seeing your patterns. You start understanding what you're actually doing with your time. And once you understand that, you can make changes. You can say, okay, I saw that I wasted 2 hours scrolling yesterday. Today, I'm putting my phone in another room when I'm trying to focus. You can say, I noticed that I felt anxious this morning, but I didn't deal with it, so I was irritable all day. Tomorrow, I'm going to acknowledge that anxiety and do something about it. This kind of self-awareness is where real change begins, not in big motivation talks or New Year's resolutions, in quiet, consistent self-observation and then small adjustments based on what you see. How to recognize opportunities that others miss. Here's something interesting that I've been thinking about. The difference between someone who's successful and someone who isn't usually about the opportunities they have. It's usually about the opportunities they notice. Most people are waiting for a big break. They're waiting for that one huge opportunity that will change everything. They think one day someone is going to discover me. One day I'm going to get that perfect job. One day my break is going to come. And while they are waiting for this mythical big break, they are missing the opportunities that are right in front of them every single day. Because here's the truth, opportunities are everywhere, but they don't always look like opportunities. Sometimes an opportunity looks like hard work. Sometimes it looks like something boring that you don't feel like doing. Sometimes it looks like a failure. Sometimes it looks like feedback that's hard to hear. Sometimes it looks like a responsibility you didn't ask for. Let me give you an example from my own life. I'm building this podcast, right? And I'm doing it myself. I'm recording it, I'm editing it, I'm uploading it. There's nothing glamorous about it. Some days it feels tedious. It would be easy to say, I'm waiting for someone to help me. I'm waiting for better equipment. I'm waiting for a bigger audience before this is really worth doing. But I realize that every episode I create is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to improve my speaking skills. It's an opportunity to clarify my own thinking. It's an opportunity to get better at editing and audio production. It's an opportunity to connect with people. It's an opportunity to build something that might help someone down the road. The opportunity isn't in some magical future moment. It's in this moment, doing this thing, right now. This is the shift in awareness that changes everything. When you start seeing every experience as an opportunity, your entire relationship with life changes. Suddenly, you're not a victim waiting for things to happen to you. You're an active participant in your own growth. Think about language learning for a second. A lot of people say they want to speak better English, but they're not really looking for opportunities to practice. They wait for English classes, or they wait for a conversation partner, or they wait for the perfect conditions. But if you're aware, you see opportunities everywhere. Every English song is an opportunity to practice listening. Every English article is an opportunity to learn vocabulary. Every video you watch is an opportunity to pick up new phrases. Every conversation in English, even if you're nervous, is an opportunity to practice speaking. Or think about building discipline. People say they want to be more disciplined, but they are looking for some big change to happen. In reality, discipline is built in small moments. When you have 5 minutes and you could scroll your phone or you could read something valuable, that's an opportunity to build discipline. When you're tired and you could skip your morning routine or you could push through, that's an opportunity. When you make a mistake and you could make an excuse or you could actually learn from it, that's an opportunity. The issue is that most people aren't paying attention to these micro opportunities. They think opportunities have to be big and obvious. But the biggest transformations in life come from noticing the small things and acting on them consistently. I also think about resilience and growth. When something goes wrong in your life, you can see it as just a setback, or you can see it as an opportunity. What is this teaching me? How can this make me stronger? What skill do I need to develop to handle this better next time? What am I learning about myself right now? I've noticed that this completely changes how people respond to difficulty. Some people go through a difficult situation and they come out of it bitter, feeling like the world is against them. Other people go through a similar situation and they come out of it stronger, having learned something valuable. What's the difference? It's not the situation, it's awareness. It's the ability to see an opportunity inside the challenge. Let me ask you this. If someone offered you a chance to practice your English for 1 hour, but it would be challenging and you'd probably make mistakes and it wouldn't be comfortable, would you take it? Most people would say no. They'd rather wait for an easy opportunity. But an aware person would say yes, because they understand that the challenging opportunity is the valuable one. That's where the real growth happens. This applies to everything in life. If you want to build confidence, the opportunity is in doing things that scare you. If you want to improve your skills, the opportunity is in practicing even when you're not good at it yet. If you want to build relationships, the opportunity is in reaching out even though you might get rejected. If you want to create something, the opportunity is in starting even though it won't be perfect. So here's what I want you to do. Start looking at your life differently. Look at the things you're avoiding and ask, what opportunity is hidden in this? Look at the problems you're facing and ask, what can I learn from this? Look at the failures you've had and ask, what is this teaching me about what to do differently? When you start seeing opportunities this way, you stop feeling powerless. You stop waiting for life to change. You start actively participating in your own transformation. And that's when things actually start shifting. The power of silent, steady growth. I want to talk about something that I think is counter to what a lot of people do today. Today, especially with social media, everything is about broadcasting. Everything is about telling everyone your plans and your dreams and your progress. We want an audience, we want people to validate us, we want people to know what we are doing. But I've observed something over the years. The people who grow the most are often the people who talk about it the least. They are quiet. They are not posting updates about their journey. They are not telling everyone about their plans. They are just working. They are learning. They are building. And then one day, people look around and realize, wow, this person has grown so much. They are so much further along than they were a year ago. In contrast, I notice people who talk a lot about what they are going to do. They announce their goals. They tell everyone their plans. They're constantly explaining what they're about to do. And then nothing changes. Because somehow the act of telling everyone becomes a substitute for actually doing it. There's psychology behind this. When you tell people about your goal, your brain gets a hit of dopamine, like you've already accomplished it. So the motivation to actually do the thing goes down. It's called social premature closure. You feel like you've already done it, so you don't actually do it. Plus, here's another thing. When you tell people your dreams, you invite a lot of opinions and doubt. Some people will be supportive, sure, but some people will doubt you. Some will try to discourage you. Some might secretly enjoy it if you fail because then they get to say they were right. Some will confuse you with their opinions. And here's the thing, your dream is delicate when it's new. Your vision needs time to develop and become solid. When you're constantly explaining it to people and dealing with their reactions, it can get diluted, it can get weakened, it can get confused. But when you grow in silence, when you work in private, your vision gets strong. You develop it, you refine it, you figure out what actually works, and by the time you share it, you're already proving it with results. You don't need to explain or convince anyone because the results are speaking. I think about this a lot. There was a time when I wanted everyone to know what I was working on. I wanted approval, I wanted validation. But over time, I've learned that this is actually counterproductive. The thing I'm proudest of is the thing I worked on quietly, without seeking approval, and eventually shared when it was actually good. This doesn't mean you should never tell anyone anything. It means you should be discerning about who knows what and when they know it. It means you should focus more on doing than on talking about doing. It means you should measure your progress by your own standards, not by how many people know about it. Here's what I've noticed about growth that happens in silence. First, you build integrity. When you're not performing for an audience, when you're not trying to impress people, you can focus on actually getting better. You can be honest about where you are. You can make mistakes without feeling like you're letting people down. You can experiment and try things that might not work. Second, you develop genuine confidence. Not the confidence of being praised by others, but the confidence of knowing that you've actually put in the work. You know you can do something because you've done it, not because someone told you that you could. This kind of confidence is unshakable. Third, you avoid a lot of unnecessary drama. When you are quiet about what you're doing, you avoid people trying to bring you down. You avoid unnecessary opinions. You avoid wasting energy on things that don't matter. You can focus all your energy on the actual work. Fourth, when you finally share your results, people are actually impressed because they can see that something real happened. The results are undeniable. You don't have to convince anyone or sell yourself. The work speaks. I see this all the time with people who are building something real. They are not constantly updating their social media about their journey. They are working. And then one day they announce something that's actually complete, actually impressive. And people go, wow, when did this happen? That's the power of silent growth. Now, this doesn't mean you should be hidden or antisocial. You can share things, you can let people into your journey, but the focus should be on the work, not on the sharing of the work. The sharing is secondary. Here's what I think about every day. How much am I actually doing versus how much am I talking about doing? If I notice that I'm talking more than doing, I scale back the talking. I redirect that energy to the actual work. Let me give you an example. I'm working on multiple things right now, but I don't talk about most of it. Why? Because I'm still in the development phase. I'm still figuring it out. I'm still making mistakes. Once something is ready, once it's actually valuable, then I'll share it. But right now, most of it is silent work. And you know what? This approach keeps me sane. It keeps my energy high. It keeps me focused. I'm not wasting energy explaining or defending or convincing. I'm just working. So here's my challenge for you. Try it. Work on something in silence for a month. Don't tell people about it. Don't post about it. Don't explain it. Just work on it. See how that changes your focus and your progress. I think you'll be surprised at how much more you can get done when you're not also managing everyone's opinions about what you're doing. The three types of awareness that change everything. I want to distill some of what we've talked about into three specific types of awareness that I think are the most important. Because understanding these three things can genuinely change your life. The first is situational awareness. This is your ability to understand what's actually happening in a moment. Most people miss this because they're either lost in thought about the past or worried about the future. They're not actually in the present moment. They're not actually noticing what's happening right now. Situational awareness means you're paying attention. When you're in a conversation, you're actually listening to what the other person is saying, not just waiting for your turn to talk. When you're in a meeting, you're noticing not just the words being said, but the tone, the body language, the energy in the room. When you're walking down the street, you're actually seeing what's around you instead of just moving through space. This sounds simple, but it's powerful. Because when you have situational awareness, you respond more effectively to what's actually happening instead of what you think is happening. You avoid misunderstandings. You pick up on subtleties. You understand context. The second is emotional awareness. This is your ability to understand what you're feeling and why. It sounds like it should be obvious, but most people are not actually aware of their emotions. They are being controlled by them. They are angry and they don't know why. They are sad and they can't articulate what triggered it. They are anxious but they can't identify what they're anxious about. When you develop emotional awareness, you can actually work with your emotions. You can recognize when you're tired and that's why you're irritable, instead of blaming it on something external. You can notice when you're anxious and take steps to calm yourself. You can recognize when you're excited and channel that energy productively. You're not controlled by your emotions anymore. You're observing them and working with them. The third is self-awareness. This is your ability to understand yourself, your patterns, your triggers, your strengths, your weaknesses, your values, your goals. When you have self-awareness, you understand why you do what you do. You understand what drives you and what stops you. You understand what kind of person you want to be and whether your current behavior aligns with that. A person with strong self-awareness can say, I know I procrastinate when I don't have a clear deadline, so I'll create artificial deadlines for myself. Or, I know I get anxious in large groups, so I'll prepare myself mentally before going. Or, I know I'm motivated by progress and feedback, so I'll track my results and celebrate small wins. When you have these three types of awareness, your life changes dramatically. You stop moving through the world blindly. You start acting with intention and wisdom. How awareness builds resilience. I want to talk about something that I think is really important, and that's resilience. Because I've noticed that people with strong awareness are significantly more resilient. They bounce back faster from setbacks. They don't get as discouraged. They don't give up as easily. Why is this? Because awareness helps you see setbacks for what they actually are, not what they feel like. When something goes wrong and you're not aware, it feels like the world is ending. It feels personal. It feels like a judgment on who you are. But when you're aware, you can step back and see it more clearly. You can see it as a data point, not a verdict on your worth. Let me give you an example. Someone tries to speak English in front of a group and they stumble. They forget some words. They mess up the grammar. Their first instinct might be shame. They might think, I'm terrible at English. Everyone is judging me. I should just give up. But someone with awareness would think differently. They'd think, okay, I struggled with that part. I forgot some vocabulary. I need to practice more. I got nervous, so maybe I need to work on my confidence when speaking. But I actually did speak. I communicated despite the imperfections. That's progress. Both people had the same experience, but the person with awareness is resilient because they're interpreting it differently. And over time, this interpretation allows them to keep going, to keep learning, to keep improving. This is one of the most underrated aspects of awareness. It's like a buffer between you and the difficulties of life. When things are hard, awareness helps you see the learning opportunity. When you fail, awareness helps you see what you can improve. When someone disappoints you, awareness helps you adjust your expectations and your relationship with that person. Without awareness, everything feels personal and devastating. With awareness, everything is information, data, something to learn from. Awareness and decision making. I want to talk about decision making because I think this is where awareness really shows its value. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your decisions, and the quality of your decisions is determined by how aware you are. Think about the big decisions you've made in your life, the relationships you've entered, the jobs you've taken, the commitments you've made, the risks you've taken. How many of those decisions were made from a place of awareness? How many were made from a place of emotion or pressure or someone else's expectations? When you make decisions from awareness, they tend to turn out better. Not because everything goes perfectly, but because you've actually thought through what you're doing. You understand the risks. You understand your own motivations. You're not surprised by the consequences because you actually anticipated them. For example, think about the people you have let into your life. If you chose them with awareness, you probably chose them because they aligned with your values, because they showed through their actions that they were trustworthy, because they brought something positive to your life. Those relationships are probably solid. But if you let them in without awareness, maybe you chose them because they were charming, or because they needed you, or because you were lonely, or because you wanted to fix them. Those relationships probably brought more drama and disappointment. Same with jobs. If you chose your job or career path with awareness, you probably considered not just the money, but the fit with your personality, the growth opportunities, the values of the organization. You probably thought about whether it aligned with your long term vision. Even if the job is hard, you probably made peace with it because you chose it consciously. But if you chose it without awareness, maybe you took it because you were desperate, or because someone else told you to, or because it paid well but didn't align with anything else you cared about. That job probably feels like you're just treading water. This is the power of awareness in decision making. It means you're making choices instead of having choices made for you. It means you're moving towards something you actually want instead of running away from something you don't want. It means you're taking responsibility for the direction of your life. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes the most aware decision is actually to say, I don't have enough information to decide this right now. Because making a rushed decision without enough awareness is worse than no decision. So, awareness also includes knowing when you don't know enough. Building your awareness practice. Okay, so I've talked a lot about why awareness is important. But how do you actually build it? because I think this is where a lot of people get stuck. They understand the concept, but they don't know how to practically develop it. Let me give you some concrete practices that have worked for me and that I think can work for you. The first is meditation. I know this might sound cliche at this point, but meditation is one of the most direct ways to develop awareness. Even just 10 minutes a day of sitting quietly and paying attention to your breath is training your mind to focus. It's training your mind to notice when your attention has wandered. It's training your mind to be present. I meditate because it helps me develop the capacity to observe my thoughts without being controlled by them. I notice what I am thinking. I notice when I am lost in thought. I gently bring my attention back. This is awareness in its most basic form. And over time, this capacity to observe without being controlled extends to the rest of your life. The second is journaling. I spend time every day writing about what's happening in my mind and in my life. I'm not trying to write something beautiful or coherent. I'm just getting my thoughts out. And in doing this, I gain clarity. I notice patterns. I understand myself better. I process emotions more effectively. You don't need to be good at writing. You don't need to do it for an audience. Just write. Write about your day. Write about what you're feeling. Write about what you're struggling with. Write about what you've learned. Over time, this practice builds incredible self-awareness. The third is what I call the daily review. Every evening, I spend 5 minutes asking myself those 3 questions I mentioned earlier. What did I do well today? What did I waste time on? What will I improve tomorrow? This simple practice keeps you connected to your own life. It keeps you from just sleepwalking through your days. It makes you an active observer of your own existence. The fourth is seeking feedback. I regularly ask people I trust, how do you perceive me? Or is there anything you think I should work on? This is uncomfortable because people might say things that challenge your self-image. But this is exactly why it's valuable. It gives you awareness of how you're actually coming across to the world, not just how you think you're coming across. The fifth is observing other people. This might sound odd, but I spend time just noticing how people interact. How do confident people carry themselves? How do anxious people behave? How do kind people speak to others? How do people who are successful in relationships interact? By observing others, you get a kind of external awareness that informs your self-awareness. The sixth is slowing down. In our fast-paced world, awareness is hard because everything is moving so fast. But when you slow down, when you pause between activities, when you create space in your schedule, awareness naturally arises. You can't be aware if you're always rushing. So one of the most important practices is simply to slow down. The seventh is reading and learning. When you read about human psychology, about how the mind works, about how successful people think and operate, you expand your awareness. You see patterns that you wouldn't have noticed on your own. You learn frameworks that help you understand yourself and the world better. The cost of lack of awareness. I want to talk about what happens when people lack awareness because I think this motivates people to develop it. When you lack awareness, you're reactive. You're controlled by your emotions and your circumstances. You're doing things on autopilot. You're making decisions based on impulse rather than intention. Life is happening to you rather than you directing your life. When you lack awareness of other people, you get hurt a lot. You trust the wrong people. You invest in relationships that don't serve you. You spend energy trying to change people who have no interest in changing. You make excuses for people's bad behavior because you're not really seeing what's happening. You end up feeling used and disappointed. When you lack self-awareness, you can't grow. You keep making the same mistakes and blaming them on external circumstances. You can't understand why you keep repeating patterns. You're frustrated with yourself, but you don't know how to change. You feel stuck. When you lack awareness of opportunities, you miss them. You're waiting for something to happen instead of noticing what's already happening. You feel like luck is not on your side because you're not seeing the openings that are right in front of you. You feel like the world is unfair when really you're just not paying attention. When you lack awareness, you're essentially asleep. You're sleepwalking through your life, and over time, this catches up with you. You look back and realize you've wasted years. You realize you made choices based on other people's expectations rather than your own values. You realize you were capable of so much more, but you never pushed yourself because you weren't really paying attention to what was possible. On the other hand, when you develop awareness, when you actually wake up to your life, everything changes. Not overnight, but gradually. You start making better decisions, you start protecting your energy, you start pushing yourself to grow. You start noticing opportunities and taking action. You start building the life you actually want instead of just living whatever life comes to you. Awareness and relationships. I want to specifically talk about how awareness transforms your relationships because I think this is one of the most beautiful applications of awareness. When you have awareness in relationships, you stop taking things personally. Someone is short with you, and instead of thinking, they hate me, you think, they must be having a rough day. This immediately changes how you respond. Instead of reacting defensively, you can respond with compassion. When you have awareness, you understand that people are not responsible for your emotions. Just because someone doesn't respond to your message doesn't mean they don't care about you. Just because someone is busy doesn't mean they don't value you. Just because someone makes a mistake doesn't mean they don't love you. This understanding allows you to let go of a lot of unnecessary hurt. When you have awareness, you can communicate better. Instead of assuming what someone meant, you can ask. Instead of holding on to resentment, you can address things. Instead of expecting people to read your mind, you can express yourself clearly. This creates deeper, more authentic connections. When you have awareness of your own needs and boundaries, you can ask for what you need. You can say no without guilt. You can express your feelings without attacking the other person. You can ask for help when you're struggling. This makes relationships more honest and satisfying. When you have awareness, you're not trying to change people. You're accepting them for who they are. And interestingly, when you stop trying to change people, they often change more than when you were pushing them. Because you're not creating resistance, you're creating space for genuine connection. I've also noticed that when you have awareness, you're more forgiving. Not because you're weak or because you're tolerating bad behavior, but because you understand that people are doing the best they can with the awareness they have. Someone who's hurtful is usually hurt themselves. Someone who's selfish usually learned to be selfish because it was how they survived. This understanding allows you to have more compassion while still protecting your own well-being. Relationships are where a lot of our life satisfaction comes from, and the quality of those relationships is largely determined by how much awareness you bring to them. Awareness in work and productivity. Let me talk about how awareness transforms your work and productivity because this is an area where I've seen dramatic results. When you're aware, you notice what actually makes you productive versus what just feels like you're being productive. You realize that being busy is not the same as being effective. You realize that feeling like you're working hard is not the same as making real progress. This awareness allows you to adjust your approach. For example, I realize that I do my best thinking in the morning before I check any messages or emails. If I jump into responding to things immediately, I'm in reaction mode all day. But if I protect my morning and use it for creation and thinking, I make much better progress. This is an awareness I developed through observation, and it completely changed my productivity. When you are aware, you notice your actual energy patterns. You realize maybe you don't actually work well late at night like you thought you did. Maybe you actually need a walk in the middle of the day to recharge. Maybe you can only focus for 90 minutes before you need a break. Maybe you work better with music playing or in silence. Maybe you need a clear desk or you work fine surrounded by things. Instead of forcing yourself into a generic productivity system, awareness allows you to build a system that works for your actual nature. And suddenly, productivity feels less like fighting yourself and more like working with yourself. When you're aware, You notice what actually matters. You realize that many of the things you think are important aren't actually moving you toward your real goals. You realize that some tasks are necessary but not important. You start filtering through the noise and focusing on what actually matters. This is called the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, and it basically says that 80% of results come from 20% of effort. When you have awareness, you can identify that 20% and focus on it. When you're aware, you notice perfectionism for what it is. Procrastination in disguise. You realize that done is better than perfect. You realize that you can improve something later. You realize that action creates momentum and momentum creates more action. Awareness helps you get past the perfectionism trap. When you are aware, you understand that building something requires consistency, not intensity. You understand that showing up every day is more powerful than occasional bursts of effort. You understand that small improvements compound over time. This awareness keeps you from burning out because you're not trying to do everything at once. You're building slowly and steadily. The awareness of your own potential. Here's something I want to say that I think is important. Most people have no idea how capable they actually are. Most people are operating at a fraction of their potential. Why? Because they lack awareness of their own potential. When you have awareness, you start noticing things you're actually good at. You start noticing things that come easily to you. You start noticing areas where you have natural talent or interest. This awareness helps you build on your strengths instead of just focusing on your weaknesses. But here's the thing that's even more important. When you have awareness, you also understand that you can develop capabilities. You understand that your current abilities are not your ceiling. You understand that with practice and focus, you can get better at things that don't come naturally to you. This is the growth mindset, and it's built on awareness. When you are aware that you can learn and improve, you approach challenges differently. Instead of thinking, I am bad at this, so I give up, you think, I am not good at this yet, but I can improve. It's a completely different stance. I've seen this with language learning so many times. Someone will say, I'm just not good at languages. But then they spend 6 months practicing consistently and suddenly they can speak English at a level they never thought they'd reach. The capability was always there. They just needed to develop it through awareness and consistent action. This is true for anything: public speaking, writing, singing, math, sports, leadership. Anything can be improved with awareness of your starting point and focused practice. When you become aware of your own potential, you stop settling. You stop accepting mediocre situations. You stop thinking small. You realize, I could actually accomplish more than I am accomplishing right now. I could actually become more than I currently am. This awareness is motivating, not in a forced, pressured way, but in a natural way. When you see your potential, you naturally want to reach for it. You naturally want to develop it. Awareness and fear. I want to talk about fear because I think awareness is one of the best tools for dealing with fear. When you lack awareness, fear controls you. You feel afraid and you don't know why. You make decisions to avoid fear without understanding what you're actually avoiding. You miss opportunities because fear stopped you, and you didn't even question whether the fear was justified. But when you have awareness, you can examine your fear. You can ask, what am I actually afraid of? Is this fear based on something real, or is it just an old pattern? What's the worst thing that could happen? Could I actually handle it if it did happen? Is the potential gain worth the risk? This kind of inquiry doesn't make fear disappear, but it puts fear in perspective. It allows you to act despite fear instead of being paralyzed by it. I'm afraid sometimes. When I'm creating something new, I'm afraid that it won't be good. When I'm putting myself out there, I'm afraid of rejection. When I'm trying something I've never done before, I'm afraid of failure. But because I have awareness of these fears, I can acknowledge them and move forward anyway. If I wasn't aware, I would probably just stay small and safe and comfortable. I would convince myself that I didn't want to create or put myself out there or try new things. I would think I was protecting myself, but really I'd just be limiting myself. Awareness allows you to feel fear and do it anyway. And that's where courage comes from. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is taking action despite fear. Awareness in personal growth. Let me talk about how awareness applies to personal growth because I think this ties everything together. Personal growth is intentional improvement of yourself and it starts with awareness. You have to be aware of where you are before you can move toward where you want to be. You have to be aware of your habits before you can change them. You have to be aware of your limiting beliefs before you can challenge them. You have to be aware of your blind spots before you can address them. When I decided I wanted to grow, the first thing I did was actually observe myself without judgment. Not in a harsh, critical way, but in a curious way. I asked, how do I actually spend my time? What are my default patterns? What do I do when I'm not thinking about it? What do I avoid? What comes easily to me? What's hard for me? And from that observation, I identified areas where I wanted to grow. I didn't try to grow in everything at once. I focused on one or two things and I approached them with awareness. For example, I wanted to be a better listener. So I became aware of my listening habits. I noticed that I interrupt people. I noticed that I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next instead of hearing what they are saying. I noticed that I judge what people are saying instead of just receiving it. Once I was aware of these patterns, I could work on them. I practiced, I got better. Personal growth is not a dramatic transformation where you wake up one day as a completely different person. It's a gradual series of small improvements based on awareness and consistent action. This is why I'm so passionate about awareness because it's the foundation of all growth. You can't improve what you don't see. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. You can't grow if you're not paying attention to your own life. Living with intention. I want to come back to something I touched on earlier, which is the idea of living with intention. Because I think awareness leads to intention, and intention leads to a life worth living. Without awareness, you're just moving through life based on habit and external pressures. You do what's expected, you follow the path that seems like the obvious path. You make decisions based on what other people want or what society says you should do. You end up somewhere and you're not even sure how you got there. But with awareness, you can make different choices. You can ask, what do I actually want? What matters to me? What kind of person do I want to be? What do I want my life to look like? These questions seem simple, but most people never ask them. They're too busy just trying to get through the day to think about the bigger picture. Then you ask these questions and really sit with them. Things start to clarify. You understand what you actually value. You understand what kind of life would feel meaningful to you. And then you can start making choices that align with that vision. This doesn't mean you abandon responsibility or become selfish. It means you are making conscious choices instead of defaulting to autopilot. I have noticed that people who live with intention are happier. Not because everything goes perfectly, but because they feel like they are the author of their own life. They are not just a passenger. They are not just reacting to circumstances. They are actively creating their reality through their choices. When you live with intention, you do things for reasons that matter to you. You say no to things that don't align with your values. You say yes to things that do. You protect your time, you invest in your growth, you build relationships that matter. You create work that feels meaningful. Awareness is what allows you to do all of this. Awareness is what wakes you up to the reality that you actually have choice. You are not a victim of circumstances, you are a creator of circumstances. The long term benefits of awareness. I want to talk about what happens when you commit to building awareness over a long period of time because the benefits are cumulative. In the short term, you might not notice huge changes. You might feel a bit more conscious of your reactions. You might notice a few more things about people and situations. You might make a slightly better decision here or there. But over months and years, the benefits become profound. The small decisions add up. The small improvements compound. You become a significantly different person than you would have become without this practice. Think about it this way. If you improve 1% every single day over a year, that's a 37 times improvement. That's how powerful consistency is. And awareness is what allows you to notice those 1% improvements and commit to them. I've been working on awareness for years now, and I can tell you without exaggeration, it's transformed my life. My relationships are better, my work is more meaningful, my peace is stronger, my confidence is higher, I make better decisions, I understand myself and others better, I'm more resilient in the face of difficulty. But here's what's important to understand. I didn't get these benefits overnight. I got them through consistent practice, through daily meditation, journaling, reflection, observation, through being willing to see things I didn't want to see about myself, through being willing to adjust when I discovered I was on the wrong path. The long term benefits of awareness are that you actually create the life you want instead of just living whatever life happens to you. You build genuine confidence and self respect. You develop genuine compassion for yourself and others. You experience real peace. You feel like your life is meaningful. And these are the things that actually matter. Money is great, but a successful person with no peace is still suffering. Achievement is great, but an accomplished person who's alone is still suffering. Health is important, but a healthy person who's depressed is still suffering. Awareness gives you access to something more fundamental: peace, clarity, connection, and meaning. These are the things that make life actually worth living. Mistakes and how awareness helps you learn from them. I want to talk about mistakes because I think this is where awareness really shines. Everyone makes mistakes. This is not a sign of failure. This is a sign of being human and taking chances. But what separates people who grow from people who don't is their relationship with mistakes. Some people make a mistake and they spiral. They feel shame, they blame themselves, they might blame others. They don't actually learn anything. They just feel bad. And so they repeat the same mistake. Other people make a mistake and they view it as data. They ask, what went wrong? What did I not understand? What could I do differently next time? What did this teach me? They actually learn from the mistake. Awareness is what allows you to do the latter. When you're aware, you can examine a mistake without being controlled by the emotions around it. You can see it clearly. You can extract the lesson. You can move forward better than before. I make mistakes constantly. I send an email wrong. I misunderstand someone. I approach something inefficiently. I say something I regret. I make choices that don't work out. But because I have a practice of examining these mistakes, they don't derail me. They educate me. And I think this is one of the most important skills in life, because life is going to give you mistakes. The question is whether you're going to learn from them or not. People who have this skill move through life accumulating wisdom. People without this skill just accumulate regrets. The difference is awareness. Awareness and gratitude. I want to talk about how awareness and gratitude go together, because I think this is a beautiful connection. When you lack awareness, you're focused on what's wrong, what's missing, what's not happening yet. You're focused on your problems. Your mind is trained to spot threats and problems. This is actually an evolutionary thing. We evolved to be more aware of what could kill us than what's beautiful in the world. But when you develop awareness, you can also choose to notice what's working, what's good, what you have. You become aware of things to be grateful for. And here's what's powerful about this. When you practice gratitude with awareness, it shifts your entire orientation. Instead of focusing on lack, you focus on abundance. Instead of seeing your life as missing something, you see it as already having something. This is not about toxic positivity or pretending that problems don't exist. It's about a realistic acknowledgement of the good things that are also present. I try to notice at least one thing every day that I can be grateful for. It might be simple: the coffee I had this morning, a good conversation with a friend, the ability to create, the fact that I'm healthy, a lesson I learned. Sometimes I notice bigger things, but the practice of looking for something to be grateful for, that's awareness combined with gratitude. And it changes your experience of life. You're still facing the same challenges, but you're not facing them from a place of deficit. You're facing them from a place of sufficiency. The practice of presence. I want to talk about the practice of presence because I think this is the foundation of awareness. Presence is simply being here, now, not thinking about the past or worrying about the future, but actually here, right now, in this moment. It sounds easy, but it's actually quite difficult. Your mind naturally wanders. You're sitting with someone and you're thinking about a conversation you had yesterday or worrying about something happening tomorrow. You're eating and you're thinking about something else. You're walking and your mind is somewhere else. But when you practice being present, when you actually focus your attention on what's happening right now, something shifts. You see more clearly, you hear better, you understand more deeply, you experience more fully. I practice presence by setting intentions. When I am about to have a conversation, I remind myself I am going to be fully present with this person. When I am eating, I remind myself I am going to actually taste this food. When I am working, I remind myself I am going to be fully here for this. Sometimes I succeed, sometimes my mind wanders. But the practice of trying to be present, that's what matters. And over time, it gets easier. Presence is the gateway to awareness. You can't be aware of what's happening if you're not actually present. So if you're just starting this journey of building awareness, start with presence. Start with practicing being here now. Awareness and creativity. Let me talk about how awareness relates to creativity, because I think this is often overlooked. Creativity isn't just for artists. Everyone needs to be creative because creativity is the ability to see new possibilities, to make connections that haven't been made before, to solve problems in novel ways. And awareness is foundational to creativity because creativity requires observing the world deeply. It requires noticing details. It requires asking questions. It requires being open to new connections. When you're running on autopilot, when you're not really paying attention to the world, you're not going to come up with creative solutions. Your mind just repeats what's already there. But when you're aware, when you're really observing, when you're asking questions, your mind has something to work with. You notice something unusual. You wonder why it's that way. You imagine how it could be different. That's creativity. I think the most creative people are simply the most observant people. They pay attention, they notice details, they ask why. They don't take things for granted. So if you want to be more creative, the first step is awareness. Pay attention, notice, ask questions. The creativity will follow. Building awareness in groups and communities. I want to talk about how awareness applies to groups and communities because we don't live in isolation. When you're in a group or community and you have awareness, you notice the dynamics. You notice who's really listening and who's just waiting to talk. You notice tension between people. You notice when someone is uncomfortable. You notice the unspoken rules and the power dynamics. This awareness allows you to navigate groups more effectively. You can be more diplomatic. You can support people who need it. You can avoid unnecessary conflict. You can actually contribute in a meaningful way because you understand what's happening. Without awareness, you're just reacting to whatever comes up. You might say something that creates tension without realizing it. You might misunderstand someone's intentions. You might not notice that someone is struggling. But with awareness, you can be a positive force in groups. You can be the person who actually listens. You can be the person who notices when someone is hurt. You can be the person who helps bridge differences. This applies to your family, your workplace, your friend groups, your online communities, anywhere you interact with people. Awareness and money. I want to talk about awareness as it relates to money because this is an area where a lot of people lack awareness. Most people have very little awareness about their money. They earn it, they spend it, and then they wonder where it went. They don't know how much they actually spent. They don't know what they are spending it on. They don't have a budget or any tracking. When you develop awareness about money, it changes your relationship with it. You actually see where your money is going. You notice patterns in your spending. You realize maybe you're spending more on some things than you intended. You realize maybe you have more money available than you thought if you make different choices. I'm not going to talk too much about this because it's not the main topic, but the principle is the same. Awareness is the first step to change. You can't manage money effectively if you're not aware of where it's going. So, if your finances feel chaotic, the first step is awareness. Track your spending, notice your patterns, then you can make intentional choices about how to spend and save. The awareness of mortality. This is going to sound heavy, but I think it's important. I want to talk about the awareness of mortality, the awareness that our time is limited. When you become aware that your life is finite, that you will eventually die, something shifts. Suddenly, wasting time feels less acceptable. Spending time on things that don't matter feels less acceptable. Postponing the things that matter feels less acceptable. This is not meant to scare you, it's meant to clarify you. When you're aware that you have limited time, you start making different choices. You prioritize, you focus, you say no to things that don't matter so you can say yes to things that do. I think about this regularly. I'll be doing something and I'll think, is this how I want to be spending my finite time? And often the answer is no. So I stop doing it. I redirect my energy. This awareness, while it might seem morbid, is actually liberating because it forces you to be honest about what matters and what doesn't. It forces you to live intentionally. The alternative is to live in denial about mortality, to act as if we have infinite time, and to waste our years on things that don't actually matter to us. And that sounds worse to me. The choice to be aware. At the end of all of this, I want to say something important. Awareness is a choice. Every single day, you choose whether you're going to pay attention or whether you're going to go on autopilot. You choose whether you're going to notice or whether you're going to stay asleep. This is actually good news because it means you're not at the mercy of your circumstances or your personality. You have agency. You can choose to be more aware. It doesn't happen overnight. It requires consistent practice. It requires intention. It requires patience with yourself when you slip back into autopilot because you will. But it absolutely can be done. Anyone can build their awareness. All it takes is commitment. So I'm asking you to commit, not to anything huge, just commit to noticing, commit to asking questions, commit to observing instead of reacting, commit to examining yourself and your life without judgment. Start small. Maybe it's 5 minutes of meditation in the morning. Maybe it's journaling for 10 minutes at night. Maybe it's pausing before you react to something. Maybe it's asking one clarifying question in a conversation instead of assuming you understand. These small practices compound. Over weeks and months and years, they build. You become different. You become aware. And when you become aware, everything changes. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. This whole journey of awareness and how it can transform every area of your life. I know this was long and there was a lot of content, but I really hope something resonated with you. Before you go, I want to remind you one more time. If you're getting value from these conversations, please make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. You don't want to miss future episodes where we dive into other important topics that can help you build the life you want. And if you haven't checked out the podcast playlist yet, I really encourage you to do that. There are more episodes in there that explore different aspects of personal growth and self-improvement. So go to the podcast playlist and see what other episodes might interest you. Also, if this episode helped you or if you learned something, please share it. Share it with someone you think could benefit from hearing about awareness. Your share could genuinely help them see their life differently. And as always, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for giving me your time and attention. That means more to me than you know. So until next time, stay aware, stay intentional, stay grounded. Keep observing, keep learning, and keep building yourself into the person you want to become. This is Mano, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.